like to call to order, just kidding, the
Recording in progress.
meeting of the Finance Committee, Tuesday, July 29th at 4:37 PM. Start with the roll call. Alder Gavin is excused. Alder Johnson?
Here.
Alder Hagquist?
Here.
And myself are present. Entertain motion approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. On to regular business. Consideration of possible action on the City of Green Bay 2026 fee schedule resolution. And we probably have some questions on this. Do we want to start, Clerk Jeffers, do you kind of want to, Ray, give an overview-ish?
Was it-
Sure. So our fee changes are on the first page and 10-95, so like the fifth page and the sixth page. So I'd say a lot of these changes would require some ordinance updates, but the big picture, the late processing fee for liquor licenses, when we instituted this a few years ago, this was to encourage businesses to get their licenses in on time. That is not happening, unfortunately, so that's why we're going to try to do a little more encouragement. The fees for hens and exotic and excess animals.
Clerk Jeffries, real quick
Yes.
on that one.
Yes.
I'm good with that, just recognizing how much extra time has to go in.
Yes.
Yeah.
The I guess, implementation of a late fee, is that an example of something that would require an ordinance change?
So the ordinance has $50 in it right now, so I don't know that the implementation does. There were some things that I was discussing with the law department about perhaps scaling up those fees, so that would perhaps require an ordinance change. So it started at 50, then go to 75, then go to 100, the later you are.
But either way, I think we would have to change the ordinance anyway, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we started this adoption of the schedule, the idea was to get fees out of ordinances.
Correct.
Right, so either way, it would probably have to be updated to get rid of the fee.
And yeah, you're right,
sure,
thank you.
yeah.
It does refer just to, refer to the fee schedule.
Oh, it does,
But like I
okay.
said, it was that graduated, so I'm not sure, like I said, this is a conversation that I'm still having with the law department about, is it one fee for April 15th? I would like April 15th, May 1st, and June 1st. The later you are, the more you pay.
Got it, thank you.
And then for the hens, the exotic and the excess, right now, over the limit and exotic animals don't pay any fee. And I think, if you have a cat or a dog, you pay 15. So I feel like if you have excess animals or a Gila monster, you should pay 15 as well. And that $30 is to share that initial cost with the police department because the humane officer goes out there. And I think it would be great if we could do some compensation. For hens, this is something I've been talking with the inspection department about. We would like to, again, another ordinance change, we would like to institute inspection of a coop initially, so that we can make sure that there is proper storage of feed and waste and that kind of thing. So that's,
Both are both
yeah.
just a one-time fee, correct?
So the $75 would be the first year, and then subsequent years, it would be $25 for the chicken instead of $5. And same thing for the exotic animal, it would be the first year, and then subsequent years would be 15, like dogs and cats are 15.
So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Recognizing like that, even just that topic of inspection of a coop. I don't want to conflate the two issues. Is that something that would come through in a different, like a revised ordinance?
Yes, the ordinance would have to be revised,
Okay.
yeah.
So can we do one without the other? When I think of do we inspect other types of,
And that's why
Why chickens?
That's why I didn't want to get ahead of ourselves. So I
Rats,
think it'd probably be,
yeah. Why chickens? Because the rats, unfortunately, if the chickens are not cared for properly, and the feed and the water and the chicken waste are not cared for properly, then it attracts rats. Were you aware of
Right.
that?
Of course, but
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
other animals do too, so that's the
Right,
only
so
reason
dog
I'm
waste.
asking.
So we do have a separate process, so if there's dog waste will do the same thing in terms of attracting rats, but the humane officer would respond to a complaint and then be able to issue a summons if necessary. A ticket, I should say, sorry.
But we're just here to approve the $25,
Correct.
not,
Well, the
And the
proposal is
$75.
to go to 75.
Right.
It's redlined.
75.
It's currently 25. The proposal is to change it to 75.
For each chicken,
Setup of coops,
setup of coops?
yes.
Okay.
Not each chicken.
I got
No.
4 of them on the corner, that's why I'm asking.
That'd be terrible. Your neighbor has chickens too. No, not $75 per chicken.
Okay.
And that $75 is a one-time, first-time fee. First time you get a coop, but again, an ordinance change.
Can I ask how 75 was determined? Just because the other, it is such a big increase and it's such a big amount compared to the other animal fees. How did 75 get decided?
Right, for that inspection. So a re-inspection fee is $75, and so I wanted to go in between so that we share an inspection fee with the inspection department as well as our license fee for the chickens.
Okay.
Is this an issue right now?
So when I had spoken to the inspection department, this has been on my mind for a couple of years, actually. So when I'd spoken to the inspection department, they'd actually overlaid chicken coops and rat activity, and they're they're correlated fairly well. So it has been an issue. And, people do have chicken licenses. I had 4 of them last week come in. So, and it's great. I mean, I think it's a nice thing to do. It's great for your kids, great for fresh eggs, et cetera, et cetera. But we just want to make sure that things are kept appropriately for the rest of the neighbors.
For the neighborhood?
Right. And then the massage fee on page 5, essentially. So it's currently $75, and that's a prorated fee. So I would like it not to be prorated, so that would require an ordinance change, and increase that to $150. Again, because we need to share some of those costs with the police department for background check.
Do you know how many,
Massage licenses we have
Yeah.
currently.
right, because again, I go back to the discussion we had around why we needed the ordinance, and I understand. My fear all along was unintended consequences and how that impacts legitimate operators. And so do you know how many licenses there are?
Right, so we actually will have, there's less than a dozen of them that have been issued licenses. I can get that spreadsheet to you. I don't have the number off the top of my
It's not through the
head,
next
but it's
week.
less than a dozen. So, I mean, this
I think
year
we're
we
missing
had
some.
less than 20 apply, and as you know, we had some non-renewals. We had another applicant come last night to P&P, that application was denied. So, less than a dozen, but I have shared that with Alder Grant and Alder Eck in the past, and Alder Profit as well, so I'd be happy to share it with the council. And it's just a point in time.
Yeah, and I don't need the exact list, it's just wanted to paint a broad
Yeah,
brush.
less than a
Yeah.
dozen.
Okay.
Right.
And would that fee be the same for every year, or is it the initial and then?
Every year, 150, not prorated.
Okay.
So our liquor licenses are the only license fees that are prorated. And so the massage was prorated, and I would like it to be a flat fee, like most of the rest of our licenses.
Do you think though we do more work initially, and once they're in good standing, it's more of a follow-up that we could potentially consider a cheaper renewal?
So that's something that's coming from the law department in terms of rewriting the massage license.
Okay.
I don't want to get ahead
Yeah.
of what their edits are going to be, because I think it's going to require some discussion, both at P&P, obviously at council. And so I would say, from the work that we have done this year and last year, only being in year 2 of the massage licenses, Alder Grant, it's about the same amount of work.
Okay. But I guess personally would like to see almost like an encouragement of remaining in good standing and a reward for that versus holding people back, or not holding people back, but kind of like you said with the unintended consequences of having this cost. And yeah, once we know them and we've visited their establishment year after year, hopefully kind of have a good relationship with them and know that they're in good standing.
And I certainly am, you know, I'm very open to that.
Yeah.
I think as we discuss the new contours and nuances of the ordinance, we can contemplate
Okay.
a step-down renewal. I will tell you that is not the case for liquor.
Okay,
Liquor's the same fee every year. Cat and dog are the same fee every year.
okay,
Actually, and now we get to direct sellers and solicitors. But yeah, most of our licenses are the same fee every year, just to let you know that.
okay.
Except I am suggesting for exotic and over the limit that there be a first initial hire, and then every year it would be the same $15 that everybody else, the dog and cat owners pay. So that is an exception. So direct sellers and solicitors. We have the 30-day and the annual. I think, again, given the work that is required to obtain these licenses, both from the police department and from the perspective of the clerk's office, I would like to just see an annual license, and it would expire at the end of the year. Again, an ordinance change. It would expire at the end of the year, and it'd be a flat $50 no matter when you apply. And you would have it, if you want to have it for 30 days, it means you applied November 31st. If you want to have it for 365 days, it means you applied January 1st.
And then, that's a lot easier administratively, I
Yes,
would
it is.
assume,
Yes,
from your
it is.
perspective.
Yeah. And then that is all I have. Yep.
Jeffries, do the events fall?
No, not
Okay.
anymore.
I just noticed a lot of that stuff was redlined, that's why I didn't know.
Yeah, no, that's not me.
Okay.
That was my former role.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I didn't know if you, so she was only speaking to the items in here that are relevant to her.
Right.
Right.
I didn't know if you were under the impression she had the whole thing.
I was, yeah. So who was the special events then?
Assume the mayor's office, right?
Yeah, it's the mayor's office.
Okay.
So that's why I used to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't have anything. And, you know, for us, any special event, the picnic permit, that is all regulated already,
Through the
it's
state.
$15, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume you just want to bring up each, you can bring up each department then? For
Yeah.
These changes?
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And Clerk Jeffrey?
Thank you.
So the next would be special events, or is that where we are, right?
If you're going in
Sales.
order, it would be buildings and construction.
Why is my different?
So DCED. That's if you want to go in
Red
order.
line.
And I'm only calling out the stuff that's redlined, so. Is that you, Bill? Tag team?
Sure, so we're scrambling a little bit. David Buck is out sick today. John Leroy is on the way down to help answer any questions you might have regarding our zoning changes. Bill, while he's on the way down, do you want to give a quick, oh, there you are.
So briefly regarding our inspection, pretty quick summary. If you have specific questions, fire away. Our minimum service fee to doing business, doing inspections is $75. Our re-inspection fee, which Celestine alluded to, that matches that. So that's the cost of us sending an inspector out to do any type of inspection. What we did is match our permit fee to what that minimum inspection fee, so the majority of them increased by $25. So if it was a $50 permit cost, depending on what that specific charge was, went up $25 to match our minimum service fee. The only exception to that is permits that were $70 moved to $100. So basically a $25 increase to match our minimum service fee. All those permits require inspections to be completed by the various trades. So we wanted to get into alignment with what our minimum service fee for the cost of the city doing business for those tasks that we have to complete.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, and I'm just kind of scanning these. Again, I go back to why we kind of created the fee schedule, and the hope was to avoid substantial increases each year, worse, things that don't get adjusted for 20 years because it's buried in an ordinance. And
Which is the case for this.
yeah, and obviously, I mean, we're looking at, big increases on a lot of these as a percentage. And I understand what you're saying about leveling it, but do you feel that with these changes that this right sizes, I guess, or properly captures or reflects the cost
Yes.
to do the review?
Yes,
So
in fact, we're probably right in the middle. When I looked at other surrounding municipalities, I, tried to make it fair and consistent with where we were at, knowing full well that since I've been here, I don't remember our permit fee schedule ever changing. Only with the exception of that is our reinspection fees. It just made sense to me if that's our minimum charge for us sending an inspector out there to conduct any type of business, would make sense to align that with all of our required inspections to match that job taking place, especially from a budget perspective.
Yeah, and I think just from my perspective, what I would love to avoid is every year, right, it's this 25, 50% increase. And in an ideal world, every year, the increase aligns with inflation,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Recognizing that you're not going to change it every year, but
Yeah, it's something that probably should have been captured, long ago, with appropriate percentage. It is a big jump, but when you compare it to where others are charging, it's in alignment. And a lot of, the big one usually comes when we're calculating the square footage cost. So, large commercial construction, that permit can be significant because we're usually using the 14 cents per square foot in alignment, so that's usually where the significant fees come into. That, we did that change, I believe, last year, where it was just simply rounding. We were using 3 decimal places, and that creates a lot of issues from an accounting and permitting programming standpoint, so.
and what I would suggest maybe, Bill, is, again, as a percentage, they're big numbers, but as a dollar figure, right? It's not real
Right.
substantive, but
Right.
what I do like, for what it's worth, is when I'm looking at the public works stuff, where they're like $1 increases, where it captures inflation in a way, right? Or updated costs, so I just would encourage department heads, I wouldn't be afraid to come back next year with the $1 increase, right?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of capturing it every year, so we're not always behind in subsidizing.
To speak to that, we could definitely look into that. I think one of the other tasks we're tackling with is the amount of unpermitted work that's out there, so make sure it's fair and consistent with people that are pulling permits and following the rules and stuff. Our plan is to work with law and to address some of those issues. That's gonna take a little bit more of time on task because how we track that and how we capture that and how we use that enforcement mechanisms and stuff. So didn't want to quite do it all at once, wanted to make sure we built the foundation first of where those base fees need to be. But yeah, that's something we could definitely look at and track around the area, so that way we're promoting development.
Good.
So when someone pulls the permit, I know we talked today about watching the process throughout and at the end. This fee includes those follow-ups as well, or are they charged then a reinspection for that final product?
They could be charged a reinspection if they do not, if we have to go back and it's something where there's an enforcement action that needs to take place or they didn't follow through on some aspect, then we would do that. But with this permit, with these base fees built in, it builds in based on the permit type and what exactly they're doing. It builds in all of those inspections.
Okay.
So that's where it makes it fair and consistent. If it's over and above that, where somebody's abusing the permit, that's when we use our reinspection fees and
Okay.
citations and other enforcement actions.
We're here, I'm trying to find it, for short-term rentals. Is that fee on here?
That would be, it might even be in zoning, John, is that where we have short-term rentals?
Under, chapter 44 zoning, we did not propose any changes this year.
That was fairly new within the last, couple of years where that permit was established, so.
It says rooming house, please.
It's a rooming house?
That's what I thought was short-term rental.
It's 44-1580
Near the back.
on page 18. We have an initial short-term rental permit fee of $500 and then an annual renewal of $250.
And when you say an annual, why is the annual or the subsequent less? Then the only reason I'm asking is because we have two of them in our area which are causing a lot of issues. So when I look at the fees that we're charging, is there any,
Same enforcement action could take place. Once that permit is established, it's easier and it's less administrative time just renewing it. Because simply they're updating their information, as long as everything's correct, there's less, paper, because their information is in the system. But if they're creating nuisances and creating violations, that we would handle is just like any other permit or any other, parcel property, citations, reinspection fees, other types of enforcement action. The goal of that is if somebody's creating a nuisance and somebody's creating a service above and beyond, that they would get compensated that. So for the taxpayers that are following the rules, they're not having to pay for excessive services that are being somebody's requirements.
I know I would just look at a flat for every year. Because this one is one that starts at 500 and goes down, like we were talking about the massage licenses.
Yeah, they're different. It's other municipalities, villages and municipalities are different.
John, are you Board of Appeals?
Yes.
So I noticed a couple new ones that are for work already started or completed. And then, of course, an increase in the initial application fee as well. I assume if work is already started or completed, they're not going to get a permit unless they're in compliance. So that means they've done this work without a permit. Is that correct?
Yes.
What happens if somebody does work without a permit? What is usually the penalty or consequence? I mean, the reason I'm asking, right, to me, it feels like you're doing the same amount of work, whether the work's completed or not. And I'm just giving you my gut reaction. It feels punitive to me. But then I think that's the purpose of a municipal citation. So
The time that it takes to, depending on the circumstance, depending on what type of permitted activity that was already done to undo that, the time that John, planners, inspection staff, working through the documentation of what they would need to do to undo that, I think probably captures that fee. I'm not speak for you, John. Yeah.
You do. So when we're talking with folks who are looking at a variance, typically speaking, if they have not performed the work, we try to find ways within the code to make that work. Many times people come in for the question of variance, and we'll find a way within the code to make their goal happen that can still fit within the confines of the code. Many times when somebody has already done the work, they don't want to give up that work. They've already put money into it, and they don't want to find ways to get with the code. And we're finding other possibilities of ways to still make this work to where their new construction was placed, and we're trying to make this work within the code as far as differences in the overall scheme. So I'd say there's a bit more work that is involved with that. Now, when we looked at this, we compared it to other municipalities, both in the metro area and in other areas that are of a similar size in the state. Some do require this is one where we're taking on where if you've done the work, generally speaking, it's a double fee that's being placed upon in other municipalities. And that's where we took that basis from.
Some have a sliding scale too, that if you have if repeat violations, it goes up from there. That's what we're exploring possibly in the future, depending on if we have a repeat contractor that we've warned in the past and it's a continuous problem, then that's taking a lot of time on task away from other service that we could be providing to other residents, because we're constantly having to handle enforcement actions and follow up and subsequent inspections and things of that nature.
at what point does that tip into a citation?
Varies based on the severity, but that's part of the.
Because again, if it's happening multiple times, they're doing work then multiple times without a permit.
Yeah. The citation process, though, and Lacey, I don't want to put Logan on the spot, but sometimes that enforcement of that and capturing that, sometimes in this aspect, that can cost the city money, and it still results in non-compliance. We're still at the exact same spot, and city services have been put into place from a staffing standpoint we're still not at a made whole
Mhm.
position.
Okay.
So the citation really isn't necessarily meant to capture that revenue, as it more is to address the significance of the violation that occurred.
Yeah, so long as the fee doesn't become so high that you push people into non-compliance.
Yeah, this, and that particular fee that you're pointing out, is we don't want to encourage the opposite of that, the negative behavior where, oh, it's easier for me to just do the work and ask for forgiveness later. That's punishing the people that are following the rules, doing it the right way, in compliance, and not necessarily creating a non-conformance, and then just being allowed to get away with it.
What we're trying to accomplish that does not involve fees is folks come to us and we want to find a way that avoids the variance. It does take a longer time to do that, but that is the goal. The code has flexibility in trying to find ways to make it work on each site.
If they do it up front and we're able to review that, it solves a lot of issues and also can save the consumer money.
Sure. And I have no doubt it takes time, and just fundamentally, it wouldn't make me vote against the whole resolution here, but fundamentally, the thing with the Board of Appeals fees that I don't like is that if you're successful with your appeal, right, it's because the zoning code is not allowing you to do something that the law allows you to do. And now we're asking residents here to pay a fee to do something that the law allows them to do. It's just that they have something unique about their law, right? So if the variance is granted, I just, again, it's a fundamental thing that just makes me not feel great that certain residents have to pay a fee to have something and others don't. And yeah, like I said, it's nothing that you would do differently, so.
I'll just, some background on fees throughout the area and the state. The 120, so residential, commercial, some municipalities do not make a distinction, whether it's 1 and 2 family or the rest. And others do, and so that's what we've done. We've had a lower fee for 1 and 2 family compared to the more commercial type of facility. And that's been reflected both currently and what's proposed. The fee schedule as far as what places have charged, I still say we are in the median area with these increases. The lowest has frankly been about $100. At 125, we're part of the lower end. The highest that we've seen is around $1,200 for a variance. In the area, the highest there is around $1,000. So it still is, relatively speaking, in that medium range, but reflecting a jump that is in line with many other municipalities.
And when you're working with them, are you explaining this to them up front so that they know there's a fee coming?
That there'll be a fee that's involved with this. So right now, mind you, we don't have the any fee in place for a violation that somebody had already done the work. But yes, we let them know that the fee would be, current fees are $125 or $250, correct. It does not matter how many variances you're asking for. If you're asking for one specific site project, whether it's one particular question of the code or multiple, it's still the same fee.
Theoretically, they could get a citation right away, because there's a violation there.
Right.
So theoretically, we could, from an inspection standpoint, enforcement standpoint, issue a citation, which would ultimately cost them more. On top of that, our goal
I
is
just want them
compliance.
to know walking in, you didn't follow the rules, so it's gonna end up costing you more, which we'll work with you on, but
And that's always been our goal, is to try to work with them and comply, and how do we do that in the effective way, but not as costly.
See, this is what happens when personnel only takes 53 seconds. All the questions get saved for you guys, so.
We were prepared for that.
Okay, let me look through here. So we are through building and construction. Anything else for building and construction? And we are, let's see what's next. Sorry, guys. Businesses? Anything in there? I don't think there's anything. Oh, that's the massage establishment. Clerk Jeffries kind of covered that.
Yeah, this is,
Do you have something?
yeah, this is where the special event
Events.
fee
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
is.
you're right.
There's a
Sorry,
bunch
a lot of
of,
scrolling.
there's a bunch of stuff redlined here, but also something that was not noted as redlined that appears to be new. I looked at last year's schedule and I did not see it on last year's schedule. And that was the recurring events. So that was added in there but not really noted as something new. So I bring it up because I don't know if there's anything else in the document that I didn't catch that would be brand new.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, you're correct. That is a new
As well.
part of it. Yeah, this is something that there's been discussion about in terms of encouraging the community to utilize some of the city services, and there are more reoccurring events that are happening in the city. This would be one way to help encourage that the fee would be reduced based on how many more events are going on. Again, reoccurring event, that would be the same event.
So I know there's someone here that would want to speak to this, so I would make a motion to open the floor.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the floor is open.
You want to come up?
Yep, please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Sure, Jen Metcalf, 2506 Newbury Avenue, and I am here representing Downtown Green Bay Incorporated, which is, as you guys know, one of the downtown business improvement districts, and certainly in an organization that puts on a lot of special events. About 50 event dates this year. So you can imagine this impacts us, and this is nothing new. And in fact, I want to acknowledge the fact that all of the things that were struck from what looks like going forward make a lot of sense to me. I appreciate kind of cleaning things up, and nice that you are kind of reducing that cancellation fee. Things happen, weather happens, things like that. But one of the things that does impact us is this reoccurring. And it's interesting because I don't think, and I've been there 8 years, I don't think we've ever been charged more than one application fee for an event. So I'm going to use our Saturday Farmers Market as an example. It runs 23 weeks. And so when we would apply for that special event permit, it would be X dollars. And in this case, I think it's going to be $175 or $200, depending on whether that's a medium or large. That application fee was one time. And this year, for the first time, when we received our bill this year, it was per week, so for 23 weeks. And so we were surprised, met with the mayor's office, and kind of asked those questions. Because that was kind of a shocker to us, and as a nonprofit organization, it does impact your budget, you know. So doing the math, if we have to pay that fee, that application fee, and again, I kind of say it that way because it feels like an application fee should be your application time, not a permit fee. That application fee, if we have to pay that fee for every event date, that adds nearly over $2,400 onto that event alone. And when I add it up for all of our other events, and we do have some series events, it will add over $4,000 onto our events budget for the year. That was kind of a surprise and really will impact whether our ability to be able to do as many events as we do currently do. And so I guess...
Just to clarify, because if you received that bill for all 23 events this year, that was for the full permit cost, right? Whereas that 2,300, is that based on the calculation that's in here?
I calculated 2,400 based on what's in here, which is for the first 4, it's $700, and then from 5 through 10, because and I guess clarify for me, if it's 11 or more, which is what we are, I did it 3-tiered. It was $700 for the first 4, which we're paying full price for, and then from 5 to 10, we're paying the 75%, and that's $656.25, and then from 11 to 23, we're paying $1,050 per week.
Okay.
For those weeks. So that's where I get 2406.25.
Okay,
So-
because again, I just doing math, 23 events, if you're at 275 for this year, it would have been an extra $6,050.
Yes,
But I assume
correct.
the same thing applied to Fridays
Fridays
on
on
Fox.
Fox, yep, yep,
So that's another probably a couple thousand, I would imagine.
yep, yep,
So you're approaching 10,000-ish
Yeah.
this year, but
right. We had some concessions.
notwithstanding any conversations I know you've had at the mayor's office, but next year, because of the sliding scale, that
Correct.
10 might go down to
4
5.
is what I've calculated. 4
Okay.
based on if we do exactly what we do this year. That doesn't,
Okay.
we might do something different.
Yeah,
My
I just
guess
wanted to
is-
understand.
Correct, correct. So, so yeah, just, I guess, I want some clarification, and then also just a reminder that that's not the only fee we pay. We pay, because our events have sometimes alcohol or other variables, we are required to have police. So every Saturday Farmers Market, we pay for 2 police officers. Fridays on the Fox, same thing, we pay police officers, and those costs have gone up over the years as we've had to pay, in different scenarios. We pay for the barricades, we pay for other additional DPW costs, sometimes we pay for a tent permit or an electrical permit. Sometimes we pay for park fees. So if I want to talk about Saturday Farmers, or Fridays on the Fox, according to the new schedule, it'll be $1,000 just for the application fee, $1,000 or more for parks, more than police is on top of that. You can see how it starts to become cost prohibitive, and as a nonprofit organization who relies solely on sponsorships and minimal amount of event revenue, because intentionally, right? Because we want these events to be free and inclusive and open to our community. This really impacts us. So I guess I wanted to ask the question of whether or not that makes sense for an organization like us. I'm sort of speaking on behalf of others, either, like me or in our future, that might want to come in and do events for the city. It really has consequences. If we have to incur those costs, we may have to make cuts. We may have to consider not doing some of those events. We may have to cut other programs if we want to keep doing those events. That's how it's going to impact us. Any questions?
When you have net income from your events,
Mm-hmm.
how do you use it? What's it used for?
No, very few of our events make any money. It covers the costs of the event. When I mentioned Fridays on the Fox, bands are not cheap and they continue to get more and more expensive. So very few of our events, we get a sponsorship, we have a little bit of event revenue, and we're lucky if we bring in a little bit to help cover the admin costs.
So you're essentially activating public spaces for...
Correct. As a nonprofit business improvement district, we have no space other than the public realm to activate. So,
Okay, and the reason I asked the question, of course, which is slightly different than maybe you're aware of any for-profit
Right.
event organizer that might come into the district.
sure, like a run. Some of the run groups that come in and do those, they charge a fee. Now, not to say that we don't charge for beer and have a little bit of income, but that's not our intent as the organization, for sure. We're not a profit-generating organization. So I don't know if I'm advocating for the exception or if I'm encouraging reconsideration of that recurring fee. Again, it's the first time that we were assessed that fee this year.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I've been a nonprofit exec, so
Yeah.
these really do impact the nonprofits that are trying to bring programs in that
Yeah. Affects the budget.
Okay.
Any other questions?
never,
Anybody else wish to speak? Okay.
Motion to close the floor?
so moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The floor is closed.
So before we move forward, this does concern me, the special events and all of the work that goes on, because we have so many things downtown. And if we're going to, every single time now, assess a fee, which means you got to raise more money from a lot of employers, a lot of people, what's the theory that we want to do this? Based on what?
Your question is, what's the theory that we charge per?
No. What is the theory that we want to now go from charging as an initial, and then farmer's market runs for 12 weeks, versus charging every single week? The adding of a substantial amount of costs. I'm just trying to understand, okay, this is what it was, now we're proposing this, so what's the theory on why we want to increase this so much?
Well, I just want to also say,
I don't know
I'm
who
happy
should-
to answer some of these questions, but I don't actually manage the program, but I can speak to, what I think I know is going on, if that's all right with you. I think we've heard that there may have been some differences in the past in terms of how the charging was being assessed. I think that's what's being spoken about. But I do want to also recognize that, it is a joint program to allow for anyone to use public spaces for their own events. So we're shutting down streets, or maybe a park being reserved. So there is an impact to the city too in terms of disruption of normal flow. So recognizing that there are going to be some costs associated with that type of request. So it just, that I think what you're hearing is a testimony that been a difference in how it's being charged out. And with that understanding, we're looking at trying to balance both the interest of wanting the people to utilize their public spaces, but also recognizing that the city has an obligation to protect those places as well. And part of that is ensuring that there's PD at certain events that may require it, if there's barricades for protecting patrons that may be walking on the streets. So it's a tight balancing act, and I can certainly empathize, but the city also has to make sure that they're respecting those considerations as well for everybody. Making sure that we're doing this for all people. If anybody would apply for a reoccurring event, it doesn't matter the type of size of the event. If they have multiple recurring events, they're going to be eligible for this type of discount. So.
Discount? What do you mean discount?
So the way that it's set right now is that there is one fee, and then if you have a recurring event, the first to the fourth event will be charged at that same 100% of that fee. If you have more than 4 events, if you have between 4 and 10 events, those 4 and 10 event will be charged at a 75% of the fee rate. And then anything after 11 events, those events 11 through say 20, will be charged at a 50% rate of the fee. So that's what I meant by a discount, is that the more that you have, the bigger the discount you'll get from the fees.
I think the caveat to that would be, at least in the case of downtown Green Bay with the farmer's market, weeks 2 through 23, no matter what the amount is, it's an addition.
Yeah.
Right, and I appreciate what you're saying, right? I don't mean to play semantics, right? But just to understand where they're coming from right now. And full disclaimer, I was part of the meeting with Jen and her team and the mayor and the events team and Logan and others. So, obviously everybody knows I run an organization that does events. I just want to kind of point out that I do not financially benefit one way or the other from this, nor do I feel conflicted. But it's, I recognize the importance for the city to recover their costs associated with doing the review. There are, city departments though all charge to get reimbursed for their stuff. So if Public Works closes down the street, they charge the event organizer. Police charges the event organizer. Parks charges a park rental fee. There are instances where they may choose to waive or discount those, but that's on that individual department then. In the case of parks, I know it's not uncommon to do that, but then they might get recognized as a sponsor. So fees to me were always really meant to be kind of the cost of review, not necessarily a rental fee. And when I look at something like the Shared Vision Corridor Plan, which was launched out of the mayor's office to really determine how we create more activation, one of the things in that plan that was adopted by council was more activation of public spaces. And so it's, I just want to make sure that we're not doing something that's counterproductive to that sort of objective or directive.
Yeah, I agree. I
can't support this.
I don't have, I guess the hard part is I don't have a solution or an idea, but I can understand that this can not only impact the organizations holding the event, but the businesses that benefit from these events, like the farmer's market. All those restaurants are packed in the mornings. When do we have to decide this fee schedule by? I don't know who can answer that from staff.
It's going to be part of the 2026 budget.
So we have some time?
Yes, these fees, if they are to be approved, will probably slightly increase our revenues for these departments for the 2026 budget. So as they're building the budget, this would impact that. So at this point, unless, again, so we don't have to decide tonight. That's why we were bringing it around already here in August, so that if it comes back one or two more times, it gives us time to build it into the budget.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because I wrote down a few outside from this too, where I'm like, the hens, right? Like until that ordinance is changed, I don't necessarily feel great about charging more for an inspection that's not happening yet, right? So there's a few where maybe, I think it's good to get information tonight, right? But
Yeah, for the
We have
committee's
time to
purposes,
recover.
just really quick, Alder Grant, we have a list of ordinances that will come right after this, but special events is a little bit different in that there's a full ordinance rewrite, sort of pending, which was actually the subject of the meeting that we had that Alder Johnson was alluding to. So that's a full ordinance rewrite. There is certainly some in Chapter 6, but a lot of these fees, there's an ordinance change that'll come right after when they're adopted. But if we do the ordinance first and then not the fee, it doesn't really make as much sense to change the ordinance for a fee that you don't want to charge. So that's why the fee schedule's coming first for some of these. And on special events, as I said, there's a full, I think it's actually a repeal and recreate for special events. That's been in the works with all the city departments for probably well over a year, almost 2. So if you have some specific comments about how to treat recurring events, like this was the direction we got, the law department got for drafting after the meeting, and we gave you a corrected red line to you before council, but the recurring events was in an effort to address the issues posed. So if there's other direction, that's the purpose of reviewing these, certainly.
So maybe we just get any other questions we have answered on other fees, and then we'll talk about the document as a whole.
Sounds good. Okay, then let's see here, what are we to next?
Public Works, probably?
Environment, is that everything? No, there's no changes, just kidding.
Real quickly for staff, is anybody aware, because I mentioned that recurring thing was kind of put in here, but it wasn't noted that it was in addition. Is there anything else in the fee schedule that would be new but wasn't really
Is it
called out?
longer? Yeah.
There shouldn't be.
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
like I said, we can get you corrected red line.
Okay, thank you.
I thought
Yeah, and the
that's-
other thing is what's the risk of things not happening because of these fees? Yeah, what is the risk both ways? I mean, do we want to lessen the events that are going downtown? I don't think so. But is there that risk with these fees going up that they won't be able to do that? Because for years we've talked about people coming to Green Bay, enjoying the downtown, enjoying the riverfront. And I have no issue with the fees as far as, initial fees and things, but if it's recurring and they're already paying for police and barricades and they're complying with everything else, I struggle because I don't want to see that. I don't want to see those events decrease. So,
And although there's just a quick note on that, the fees actually are decreasing significantly from what they are. The issue is that, as Downtown Greenway points out, among others, that there's perhaps been some inconsistency in collection of those, especially in some cases the fee comes after the event. It's not just an application fee, but because there are fees and costs, it comes after probably some inconsistent billing and collections on that. So there might be like a private event holder, whoever that pays all the fees up front, but if it wasn't billed to another, I know there was some like special event money that's given out to pay for fees for some events. So just, again, a little bit of inconsistency in the process, which also the ordinance seeks to kind of streamline and make less complicated, because it is actually a fairly significant and complex ordinance. You can tell just by the fee schedule with special events, small events, large events, special hazard events, and all of that takes a lot of staff time from risk management to every single department is involved in the process of reviewing these on a repeat basis. So trying to simplify it while still the direction is to maintain the permitting program and the fees associated.
well, and it sounds like there's some process issues that have to be
I think a
figured
lot of
out
those have
within
been
the
worked
city
out,
on
yeah.
how to collect it, or when to collect it, or,
And I think a lot of those
But-
were worked out, Alder Hinkvis, which was also why the sort of the kind of like, oh my gosh, we hadn't been billed this before, because there was an effort by the mayor's office, as Michael pointed out, Gary manages this program, and she tried to sort of streamline that, and that was sort of the change.
Attorney Kochart, and I don't want to get too off topic here,
Sure.
but when, that ordinance is in a good enough spot, the one thing I would encourage us to do is reach out to anybody that pulls special event permits
Yes.
and just invite them in to give it a look and provide input. I know the last time that this was rewritten, it came to the committee and nobody had ever seen it before. And so we did pause it at that time, I remember that, and we got some feedback from a couple of organizers throughout our community. So I think it would just be good to have them at the table to help provide feedback.
I agree with that.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I think in some cases like this one, we've done some emails, but there was a conversation at one point about whether everybody received it, so perhaps we'll do sort of an in-person invitation to review it.
Yeah, kind of like when we go to the home builders, and ask them for their input on something, so.
Yeah, and I think we actually did get some feedback already from our earlier round, but again, it was through email, and I realize not everybody might be the appropriate contact at the time. It's just what we have.
Great, appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, I know it's a small section, but nuisances, any questions on that one? About $2 to $3 increases. Okay, Then solid waste.
I do have a comment on chapter 28, Parks and Recreation.
Oh,
That's the
sorry.
one right before that.
Yep.
Just for clarification, under Park Protection of Parks and Greenways, it says encroachment fee. It's really an encroachment reinspection fee. So in the next draft that comes forward, we'll probably just make that change because it's not a fee. It's not a fee or charging or a charge for encroaching in the parks. It's for our time to do the inspection and to document it. It's just the same as inspection department charges for their reinspection fees. So that's just a clarification.
Director Ditch, one question was posed to me by somebody asking about park rental fees. Is that just kind of considered different?
It's different because that's not guided by city ordinance. So that's addressed in our budget. It's not addressed in this document.
Got it, okay. And I just want to be able to get back to that person provided. I figured like there was a distinction there, and I'm like, well, they don't bring the price of bottle, for water, a bottle of water here. So
It's the
there's
same like charges for the pools or our programs, stuff like that. None of that's in here.
Okay, thank you.
And the boat launch fees and stuff, that's
Boat launch
consistent?
fee is in here because that's covered by ordinance. And the boat launch fee is not changing, and it's consistent with the rest of the county as far as what they're charging for their
Okay.
boat fees for next year.
That's really low.
All right, then on to solid waste. Any questions for staff here?
Checks out.
Okay. Street sidewalks and other public places.
The obstruction permit fee, is that like for sidewalk or?
That's if they're, so the excavation obstruction, if they're blocking, if they're gonna be parking on the pavement, like a trash unit or something, or even excavating within the right of way.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of work on that one with, we review, like if they're doing excavation, we have to look at what utilities are underneath, to make sure that they're not gonna hit them. So we're reviewing all of what they're gonna be planning, and there's sometimes back and forth on those permits.
Okay.
Anything else on that one? Okay, subdivisions.
The variance, the subdivision variance, because the Board of Appeals stuff was addressed separately, is this variance not Board of Appeals but something else?
It's not, this goes through the Plan Commission.
Okay.
And the processing of a subdivision variance is pretty similar to other actions you would see in the Plan Commission, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I do have
Oh, sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry if I could interrupt again. I did request changes to the parkland development fee and the street tree fees, but they didn't make it into this document. I just noticed it today right before the meeting. Parkland fees are currently at $350 per dwelling unit. I would like to propose to make that $400. And the street tree fee is currently $100. I'd like to bump that up to $150. And I did make that request, it just, for some reason, it didn't make it into the document. What I will say is neither of those fees have been increased in a minimum of 10 years, probably well longer than that. And I have researched that we are lower than other communities, so this is just kind of getting us back on track.
What are these things? I mean, do we plant the trees?
Yeah,
When-
so
when you do subdivision?
for parkland development fees, what that is whenever there's a new development in the urban expansion area portion of the city, we charge a fee per dwelling unit that's being built. And the purpose of that fee is that money goes into an account which we then reinvest in developing a park to support that development. So, like I said, we haven't updated that one, I think in probably 12 years is my guess. I can get you an exact date if you want it. And we are much lower than other communities.
And that's per unit?
That's per dwelling unit, so
So-
per house, per apartment unit, or per duplex unit. So that is how it's currently calculated. And every municipality calculates it differently. This is just how we've been calculating it ever since I've been with the city. We can look at a different system if we want, but we probably have to change the ordinance that goes along with it.
Sure.
Because it's clearly spelled out how we calculate out that fee in the ordinance. And then street tree fee, again, it's for a new development where they're building new roads, and we plant a tree every 50 feet along the new roads that are being built. And so, $150 is still pretty low when you take a look at how much it costs to plant a tree.
And we're requiring those trees.
Correct, per ordinance, yeah. We will come in and we will plant those trees on the new roads that are built after the subdivision is complete. So if we don't have this pot of money to plant the trees, then we would not have any trees in that subdivision in the right of ways.
Okay. And obviously, we've had a couple of subdivisions come through recently, which is partly why that caught my attention now that you brought it up. And I didn't realize that's how that was calculated. But does the ordinance define a subdivision? Like, it seems
Like an urban
obvious on
zone.
its surface, right? But like, is there a minimum number of homes? Like, if somebody takes a cul-de-sac and puts in 6 homes, is that a
think,
subdivision?
Like I said, if this is, we only charge currently in our ordinance in the urban expansion district. So it only applies to kind of the outskirts of the city, kind
Okay.
of where it's farmland or maybe a single farmhouse that's being converted into something else. So this would apply whenever they subdivide it and build residential above and beyond what's there now. So let's say there's one house and they're subdividing it, but they're not going to build any additional houses. They're just subdividing it for whatever reason. They would not get a fee for the charge. Or let's say it goes to commercial, they wouldn't get a charge for commercial. But if they're taking a farm and subdividing it to build more houses, then they do get charged per dwelling unit of new houses.
Something about like Kozlowski, they put in those apartments, they're getting charged for each unit. I wonder if they know that.
That's like an ordinance thing that we should probably.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And all the
No, but that is a
developers
good question.
are familiar with this, they know this up front.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, it didn't make it into this document, but I would like to request that change.
Can you say the dollar amounts one more time? 350 to?
To 400,
And
and
then-
then 100 to 150.
Okay. That's what I thought. Any other questions on the subdivision variance? Okay, then we will go on to anything with utilities. There's only one thing. No change. Zoning, which we kind of already went through. Is there anything
Can I ask you a
else?
question about that?
Yes, I'll direct.
Thank you, Chair. So, and I know that Alder Hinkvist asked about the short-term rental, but it went up significantly leading up to the draft, and wondering, is that going to go back down? I know you were asking about it going higher. It's actually gone way up leading up to the draft. Correct?
The amount, the permanent amount?
Yeah, it says initial amount 500 and then annual renewal 250, but it was not that high.
That was the same.
It's been like
It
that for a
was?
couple of years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it went
Nope.
up. Okay. All right. Maybe that was county. Thank you.
And then on the short term, since you brought it up, Linda, do you guys go and do another inspection every year of the premises? I don't know who to ask it to.
County
Not,
does that.
I mean, on the outside, Mike, our inspector that's assigned to it, he follows up with all of them, but.
The
it's not
county
prob-
does.
The county does the interior.
Okay,
one.
that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else in that section? Then we are up to, where are we? Plan unit development.
I like the way you guys flipped that for what it's worth. Charge a little bit more for the new, but then a reduction for the amendment. That's a good move.
Anything else on that?
No?
Miscellaneous.
plan examination, the consultation, like, how do we define that?
So
Because that's a brand-new one.
it is, we talk to folks very routinely as far as site plans themselves. There are cases where we have larger site plans that involve quite a bit of different options on the site and relations back to different aspects of the code. We felt that in the past year or so, there's been a lot of folks that come in essentially trying to push for their site plans to be designed by staff, not bringing forth enough information to begin with. And so we go through 1, 2, 3 rounds of discussing with folks how to make the site be in compliance with the code, rather than just having a site plan be applied. So we looked at other codes when doing the research for the Zoning Board of Appeals and different aspects like planning developments. We noticed that became a theme in other municipalities, and we felt it had applications here.
Okay. Appreciate that insight. I mean, what I want to be careful of is that we're not like tipping into this territory where we're no longer customer focused, and then it's always about the fee. And I get there's a balancing act there, right? And, you know, depending on how many times this might actually get leveraged, is it one of those things where it's almost better to just subsidize that type of service? But I get your point if it's trying to avoid where it's abused, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's the abuse part that is what we've noticed here happening more routinely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'd maybe
Any
just
questions?
make a motion to amend to at least capture the edits that Director Ditchett referred to. So move parkland development from 350 to 400, and the street tree fee from 100 to 150.
Mhm.
So I would make that motion to make that amendment.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Are we okay to do amendment by amendment? Or do you want, like, are we good to vote on that then? And
Yeah. I mean,
or do you
it's-
want us to take it all up at,
I've already got the changes, so how
Yeah,
we guys
either
want?
way's fine, but at a time, if that's easier to be organized, that's fine.
okay, is that okay? Do you want to go amendment by amendment?
Go ahead.
Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
And I did that because I wanted to capture that. I'm comfortable if Director Ellenbecker had alluded that if this were held until the next meeting, it wouldn't have an impact on your budget process. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
There are a few things here that I would love to just maybe talk to a few staff members a little bit more. So I would make a motion to hold until the next meeting.
Okay,
And I will say.
all right, any questions or discussion on that?
And just appreciate staff coming in and giving us the explanation, understanding of this. To me, it's a really important part of the homework process, I guess.
Perfect. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We will hold that till the next meeting. Thank you, everybody. All right, then we are on to number 2, for consideration and possible action on a purchase and sale agreement for the city to purchase 1341 State Street Parcel 1-1371 at a cost of $2,821,000 with a $571,000 promissory note to be paid to the city by the seller for the March 2025 purchase of 3855 Finger Road, parcel 21-24. This transaction is proceeding pursuant to approval, development agreement 2025-01, Hogan Real Estate LLC.
And we've discussed this
Well,
before. This was
Is that
part
not
of the
to me?
proposal, right?
This is the actual lease agreement and
Right.
purchase sale agreement.
I
You
can
wanna
start.
discuss?
Mr. Hoban is here as well for all of you who haven't previously met him. It's Mr. Hoban.
Mhm.
Who's that?
You all know. Okay. So, yes, so just as the long agenda item notes, this is a purchase and sale agreement of the current Drop Forge facility, but also includes a lease back to Drop Forge to allow for continued operation and a wind down process for up to 10 years. As part of the original development agreement, you'll note that they have closed on and obviously started construction on a new facility at the Finger Road site. At the time of the development agreement, there was a seller finance promissory note issued for that property. Part of the sale here would be that we pay them the first dollar amount that you mentioned, the 2.821, and then the $571,000 comes back to the city. This is the document that lays out the terms for that sale, the lease back, and there's a subsequent addendum because there is some environmental contamination on the site and assessment work that's been done, which Deputy Director Buchanan could talk more about, and then also just talks a little bit about the funds that we would pay for that process. And I know Mr. Hoban has some comments about that as well. So, purchase and sale agreement, the lease addendum, and an environmental addendum related to site conditions.
Okay.
Do you want to open the floor?
Motion to open the floor?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Floor is open. Sorry, the other one I said aye.
Like we have to state my name and everything again?
You just have to state your name and address.
Okay.
Sorry, Jim.
Bill Holden, 1341 South State Street. I put these together just to kind of move things along a little bit.
Thank you.
I have one for Bill too. Should we
can
leave
give it
it?
to him.
Does the attorney have a copy?
I can get her one too. I got a couple extra. I guess just one.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
So we've been working to get these documents completed in the 8/31 timeframe. If you want to sit up with me if you'd like to. So there was just a few items that were hanging out there, and I kind of detailed them out and have some in order. Each of these 1 through 7, I've got documentation behind it. But I know you talked about how we got here, and one of the things that was part of this purchase was the due diligence on whether the city could get financing, as well as they wanted to do a phase 2 environmental testing. So when the development agreement was signed, the city did not have information back from Stantec on what the results of the testing were going to be, and resulting information back from the DNR on what they felt about what was found. So what ultimately happened after the fact was there was a case that was created on our property that needs to be obviously closed, and us being the owners of the property sent to us. So I guess during my whole feeling of this process and the purchase of that property was that the city was feeling like we see what we already know and we're not too concerned about it, and there's grant money and dollars, so I wasn't expecting that it was going to come back to me as the current owner of the property to have any costs related to environmental. But in the spirit of trying to move this along, we've talked about how we can share in the costs. So the first document is a document that we got back in May of '28, and that is the work that's currently in process. It's $31,700 is what they described as probable costs. So we've gotten some of the work done already. We've been invoiced for a little over $10,000, but there's still lab work dollars that need to come back or invoiced for, as well as the time spent working with the DNR, WDNR. So Keld, the key person that they want to talk to, Stantec would like to talk to, is not back until mid-August, early August. So it's kind of in a pending state right now. So what I had asked Stantec, Linnell, to do was looking at the results she's seen so far and her many years of experience and dealing with the DNR, what is she anticipating that the DNR is going to come back and suggest for additional work. So that's basically her email on 7/24. I apologize, on 7/18. So she gave, in this quote, and obviously the city's been copied on this too, but she tried to look at any possible thing that the DNR could ask for so that it wasn't coming back again to us. So that the top 46.5 is what she considers highly likely that he's going to ask for a couple more rounds of testing in some key areas that just to determine that this issue is not growing, getting larger, which it's highly unlikely that is going to change at all in the worst, because this is from things that happened many years ago before the time that our company has owned the property. But some of it could have been from fill that was brought in, but nonetheless, the DNR couldn't close it out after the first, the information that came in the phase 2. So she also listed some possible other work that could be required by the WDNR, which amounts to $1,750. So that brings the round 2 total up to 64. So we're kind of hovering at potentially $95,000 just with Stantec's work, and they point out clearly that this does not cover any fees associated with tied to the WDNR that they might assess us, or anything else that could be outside of what Stantec's work is. So basically what I've been asking for is the addendum, the environmental addendum on 4, that we have the wording the way that we've got it stated in the red line, that the city and the city's attorney crossed out and switched to their proposal, which is capping at 50,000. I would like to have it say that we're splitting the cost equally to get this to closure. I've got another letter in there, email from Linnell that would have been right before that addendum, and that's her feeling highly likely that all of the costs that she spelled out is going to get it to closure. But this is 2 more rounds she's projecting of environmental work that it's just, I don't feel comfortable being hung out there with a cap on your end and then I'm potentially stuck with any of the overages. Again, when I didn't anticipate this being part of the deal to begin with. So I can give you guys a second to read the red lines, how we wrote it compared to the cities where they came to. See if you have any questions to that point. There's a couple other topics to discuss.
So what you're basically recommending is a 50-50 until it's done?
Correct. Okay. One of the things in the interest of our own, both parties' cash flow, is I talked to Linnell, and maybe under normal circumstances, if you're trying to get it closed and be done and we're moved out and you guys take over the property, it might be every 3 months they want the testing, these next rounds of testing done, but she's pretty confident that that could be stretched out some so we don't have to shell out the 50,000 or plus per party in such a short period of time. We're not going anywhere next week, and you guys won't be taking over the property anytime soon, so if we can stretch that out to help cash flow for both parties, we'd be more than willing to do it, and have had the city involved, Matt, especially on any of the different conversations we've had with Linnell, what it looks like and what the next steps will be. So,
well, and I think it makes sense to remediate it as we go over the next 10 years, and we did not know, neither did you, when we did the final deal, that this could, we knew there was going to be issues with the DNR, and from my experience on the redevelopment authority, this passes the smell test with me. Makes sense. Brian?
Yeah, I understand what Mr. Hogan wants here. But I think there's a few other things that we also wanted to address, and then so maybe we'll let him go through his items. Because staff will probably have some feedback.
I didn't want to ramble on if you had some questions up to the first few documents. I know you haven't seen these yet. So in tying in with the changing the environmental addendum on the purchase and sale agreement, there's a line, 13.2, and it talks about if for some reason the city was to breach on the deal, all we're asking for is that if the city chooses to back out for whatever reason in this whole program, that they're still going to help us to cover 50% of the costs of the environmental. Because again, it wouldn't have surfaced if we weren't going through this whole process to begin with. And that was, leading up to this meeting, it wasn't something that the city attorney was comfortable with having that language in the PSA. Again, this is only if the city backs out, so as long as everything goes through, it's not an issue, but it gives me comfort to have that in there. There was discussion with my attorney and the city attorney on PSA 10.3, and that was sharing some of the closing costs up to $2,000. I didn't see any of that wording in advance. I thought that might come to our side, but do you have anything on that to present? Or?
The additional money we just agreed to this morning, no, this was published yesterday, so, but yes, we are in agreement on the $2,000 addition to 10.3, or we were earlier today.
Yeah. So there was some emails going back and forth between the city and our attorneys. But
Yes, this had to be published yesterday
Yeah.
before, so the revised draft would be from today.
So I don't have the language, but it sounds like the city does. And then the final item on here, item 7, on the lease addendum, Exhibit A, just clarifying the language on the surrender of real property, item 20. It's the way that I wanted it to be read, and I can't tell if it's reading that way or not, and for everyone else involved, so that we're all agreeing to what the verbiage is. I was expecting that if there were things that we left on equipment and things that we didn't need, that you were, all the talk has been that the city plans to just demolish the building, so just leaving it more in an as-is state. And I don't know if that officially reads that way or how that's.
Definitely does not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's.
Is that on your red line document here?
I don't believe I have it on that. I just.
Okay,
the way that,
that's on this list here.
The way that 20 reads, it refers back to section 5, and it talks about improvements, and that the landlord shall at its sole expense remove or dispose of such equipment and personal property. So one of the, in 5, what we were talking about is if the city chooses to knock down a building while we're still on the property because we're not using it anymore, that they had agreed, I believe, to be responsible for removing any of the contents in it that we didn't need or want to get rid of. And was looking for, so we were going to take as much as we can and work to sell off any equipment that's not of use to us over the next years, but things that we didn't have a use for and wanted to keep. Wanted to talk about that, how we can come to agreement on it. So definitely somewhere in the range of what I'm looking for is nowhere near what you're writing, is what you're saying.
There's just a clarification that we did 2 different things about removal of personal property equipment, and there's a list of things of what like it is in the equipment it's described in here. But just we'll talk about just generally removal of the things that can be removed. There's a provision for what we call early redevelopment in there, that if there is some portion of the property that can be redeveloped or some work that's done to prepare it for redevelopment, if that's requested and you all agree, the city would probably bear more of those costs than if it was at the end of the move-out term. So if we said we want to do a project, maybe we could tear down this building or do some work in this portion of the site, we would likely fund that because we'd be doing it before the end of the lease term. But at the end of the lease term, it contemplates, like most leases do, that the tenant needs to take all of their equipment with them and not leave it to either add to for a future tenant if we do rent it as or lease it or sell it as an industrial property, or it goes through some demolition process that it would add to the costs of doing so. So that's just been a point of disagreement that we did not come to an agreement on before the meeting. It's also, I would just add that it's an unknown amount of money at this point.
And we don't have any language, nor do we have any sort of assessment about what the equipment is, what the cost of that removal could be. So we'd be sort of committing to an unknown, like I said, an unknown dollar amount for the future, but also kind of scope of the project that we wouldn't know at this time. Which was my hesitation in recommending that we agree to it.
Okay.
What do you want to leave? What are we talking about here? I mean, like,
I think
Well-
he's,
like the old equipment?
We definitely would not have a use for the old equipment. We're bringing the new equipment in.
Mhm.
We'll be using that equipment as necessary to satisfy customer needs, but the long-term plan is not to move that equipment to the new facility. As mentioned, I would try to sell it on the used equipment market, but don't have a list of all the items offhand that we don't
Right.
feel like we're going to be using.
Okay.
And some stuff is easier to scrap than others and get rid of. There's just added costs that we might be exposed to eliminate things and then if you were just gonna come around and knock it all down, maybe there's a cost sharing way of handling that too with the exit. I don't know. Just overly pretty the place up when it's just gonna or take things out that perhaps some of the equipment that's there to do that work has, it's on site and available as opposed to us going out and renting specific equipment to move things on.
so the things that maybe you would like to see improved are all documented here, but otherwise the rest of the agreement you're comfortable with?
Yeah, we had good back and forth on the majority of it, and a lot of the things that we asked to be added, or the city, we came to agreement on. It's just, the unknown on the environmental is a big one for me, that we need to have some resolution on. And then some of those items just tie into that adding it to the purchase agreement that if you guys backed out, that still have a open case that I have to deal with. So I'd like the city's support on that.
And Bill, could you speak to as well, because I do think this is very relevant. So you all may recall that the reason that the purchase price reflects higher here is because of the 1031 exchange. And so it's, so the purchase price, well, it's listed in here as 2.8, I believe, but we're also getting paid for 571,000, right, for land that was originally not supposed to be the case, right? So it's kind of a wash, but it allows the exchange to occur. Could you at least speak to the timing of that? And
Sure. So just to clarify what you're saying is the kind of fair market value that we determined on that land was the 571. If we were to get it at $1, which was one of the things the city was talking about, then we would have this bargain purchase cost.
Yeah.
So we talked to the city about if you up the purchase price and we turn around and hand those dollars right back to you at the closing time, then on record it looks as if we paid $571 for that. But the other portion of this is, and the interest in getting this done by the end of August, and the reason that I'm here today and want to push it through the council meeting is we do have a like-kind exchange that we're doing with this property that will roll into the investment into the other property, which makes it that much more feasible for us to allow this to happen. And it's kind of part of the understanding and the plan all along that we would get the development agreement going and then get the lease terms and the purchase agreement set up, and didn't at the time know there was going to be any sort of environmental addendum that was attached to it, but the results of the testing caused that. So if we are beyond that period of time, then there's a huge tax gain that we're going to get on selling the State Street property, which then makes this whole thing all that much more difficult for us to pull off.
so when you get that boilerplate language that says time is of the essence in your development agreements, this one's actually true.
And it sounds to me as if your conversation with my attorney, that if it was closed on, it went through the council meeting, that we could potentially close on the 8th. comfortable with that?
Yeah, shooting for the end of next week?
Yeah.
Absolutely, once it's approved on Tuesday, it's just getting the ball rolling with title company. It's actually already in progress, there's a few final steps to close.
So what are our city's concerns with?
Well, that's where I would, let's get all of our questions
Okay.
asked that we need to out of Bill, and then, yeah. Like, I understand where he's coming from. I don't know if anybody else has questions, but.
No, I'm,
Okay, I'll make a motion to close the floor.
Do you have a second?
yes.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Floor is closed. Thank you, Bill.
Yep. Do you want me to exit also, or?
I was gonna say, do we want to just convene?
Well, I don't feel like I need closed session.
Up to you all.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, I don't know if staff wants to maybe chime in on any of those items that.
Sure, I can maybe give an overview, and then maybe the deputy director can talk a little bit more about the environmental work. So, as I already mentioned on the last item on the removal costs, the issue is it's just like an unknown to contribute to that. The sort of, whether it was a misunderstanding throughout the process or not, it sort of has come up, and again, it's not something that we both have language to define the process yet, but it's also an unknown dollar amount, and generally, from my perspective in the city's agreements, particularly in development or purchasing properties, we don't leave things sort of open-ended. So if there was some dollar amount you wanted to contribute in the future, it would be a question of whether we have the funds available at that time. Second, on the environmental costs, which again, that can get more into the history, but we've spent about $90,000 to date already on grant funds there. So this is basically the cost to close. And I will note that I know Mr. Hoban's attorneys had worked with the previous city attorney, and I was involved when we transitioned this as well. But the phase 2, the process for that, the due diligence, is part of the development agreement. That was sort of known. I think we suspected we would have some contamination, and what we're asking for is just a cleanup to industrial, which is probably, arguably the least amount of work necessary to get a closure letter so that there isn't further action required by the DNR, and they'll have Matt share more about that. And then I just wanted to note on that part that we've gone back and forth a little bit, but that's where we arrived at the up to $50,000, so 50%, but with a cap. And Mr. Holman's asking for that cap to be removed, and again, that causes sort of uncertainty. But again, we're looking at like between what's been invoiced so far and an estimate of like $94,000. That's why we came up from an original proposal of 30 to 50 in an attempt to resolve that. And then I would just again, for the similar points, this idea that we would be responsible for all of it for some reason if the purchase doesn't go through, that's just not something that I think is contemplated in the purchase. Would a purchaser that doesn't complete a purchase be responsible for paying back a seller for that work? It was contemplated as part of the process, like I said, in the development agreement. And I would turn over maybe to Matt to talk more about the grant funds and the work that's been done to date.
Can I just clarify one thing? You weren't saying all of the environmental, it was just a similar scenario where it would be 50% of the cost if you breach the contract. We would still cover half,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you made it sound like we were going to say.
Yeah, and I think,
Well,
I'm sorry, yeah, and I know we closed the floor, but, so the point that would be though, if you agree to take the cap off, the 50% share, that goes hand in hand from my perspective with the paying back all the costs. So if we've committed to no cost, I know you're saying it was to be the 50%, but it would still also not be subject to a cost. So even if it's 50%, there's still no cap. So I get that, that's a good point, Bill, I appreciate that. That it's still 50%, not all the costs, but still no cap or a specific dollar amount associated with it.
I don't think I have much more to add. I think City Attorney Kocher captured it pretty well. She mentioned we did invest about $90,000 so far in assessment work for this site with our EPA grant dollars. That's quite a bit more than we anticipated having to spend. So we've invested that thus far. We are committed to helping bring this site to closure. Currently the terms that the staff is comfortable with is 50%. Just having that cap on it, right? We don't have an endless supply of money here. And while we anticipate it will be $100,000, if it is, then we will be able to accommodate that with the dollars that we've currently set in these terms, with 50% up to 50% or 50,000 from the city.
The funding source on that, if I recall correctly from one of the meetings we had on this, is 30 coming from balance of the grant and 20 from the TID, or do I have that wrong?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The 50,000, maybe I'll just ask you the question instead of trying to recall what I thought
Okay.
was the case. Where does the 50,000 come from?
Oh, that
The
would
source.
be, right, that'd be the TID entirely. I do.
Entirely from the TID?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, entirely from TID 22, which is our shipyard TID, which is in a half-mile distance from this site, so we're able to use that TID. As you're aware, we are heavily invested already in the shipyard project and Badger Sheet Metal redevelopment. So it's a TID that's
Distressed.
It's distressed, yeah, that'd be the term I would use.
Mhm.
So we don't have a ton of cash to spend.
Yep. Okay. Do we need to identify that as the source, or does that go through a different path? But what I don't want, right, is that all of a sudden we have to authorize it, and then what if council votes no on that?
So we did secure funds already. We reallocated from TID 12.
The answer to the question is no, it's not a separate approval. That's anticipated, and we could have specified, I guess, the funds were coming from. I apologize if that's missing from the process, the funds for the sale, but it
Okay.
doesn't require a separate approval.
And that's what I just want to be sure.
For development purposes,
Yeah.
it's usually, unless it was something other than the TID or a grant that we've already accepted or something like that, there's not a separate process.
Okay. I have a few thoughts, Alder Grant, if I don't want to speak out of order, though.
Go ahead,
Unless there's
Alder
more
John.
questions. I just didn't know if there were any more questions, but.
Any questions? Alder, anything?
So, to Bill's point, I think item 1 is just really kind of like a statement of fact. Item 2, is really just kind of combined, I think, with item 1, understanding what the probable exposure is. And I think the uncertainty is just whether or not the DNR would potentially require some additional testing, and then who bears that expense beyond what's been projected up to this point. When you look at phase 2, I think this is where I struggle a little bit, because in theory, we could have just bought it, right? Like, phase 2 is a smart due diligence thing. Phase 1 was part of that too, I presume, right? So it's a smart due diligence thing. But in theory, you could have just bought it, not avoided this, or avoided this, right? And then you wouldn't have had a DNR case that would have been opened up. And that's kind of the case, I think, we're a situation that Mr. Hoban is in, right? If he were not selling it, none of this would be going on either, right? So I can appreciate the dilemma and why maybe that wasn't all contemplated in the beginning. So I do like the idea of a cap, because I think, to Matt's point, to just leave us wide open, I think is probably not being a very good fiduciary representative of city government. But I also recognize that we're beyond the 5-yard line. We're like at the 1-yard line. And I wouldn't want a dollar figure, quite frankly, a rounding error on a deal of this size to be the thing that holds us up. So I would make a motion to lift the cap to 75,000. And if the amount were to exceed that the city and the seller would come together to talk about alternative resolutions. And again, the 50 is meant to kind of capture what we believe it will be. So the 75 just gives the seller some assurances that if it does exceed that, there's a buffer there.
Can we cover that with the TID?
Well, yes,
Is there enough, though?
But here's the way, the TID's upside down right now, right? Because you borrowed against it to build the shipyard and probably some stuff over there. So can you cover it with the TID? Well, you can always transfer from an overperforming TID into this one. And then on the flip side, I hate to be dismissive about it, we don't have to worry about it until the TID closes. Now, if the TID is negative at that time, well, then your levy's got to worry about it. Right, but that's how many years away yet? 24, 23, 22,
21 or so.
Right, so it's, my point is you've got 21 years to recover that with new increment.
I just want to make sure staff is comfortable with your amendment.
Well, I think staff's recommending
Yeah.
what they believe is the best thing for the city.
Right.
I'm just trying to get us over the goal line.
Yep. I mean, 75 makes sense. I was even going a little higher. 'Cause everything's going up.
It was 75, it's 100, it's 150 in cost.
I think 75 gives the buffer, but then it ensures that if it gets above that, that we are coming back
We come
together
back.
and we're talking about it.
Yes, Alder?
I don't have all the documents in front of me, but, no, it's okay. But I want to make sure in understanding the motion, because there was the mention of if the city backs out, that they still are paying for that. And how does that look in your motion?
I am going to contemplate that separately. So what I'm referring to right now, the
I can give you
probably-
the paragraph number if that's helpful.
yeah, that would be helpful, thank you.
Hang on a second. It's actually. On the addendum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's in the environmental addendum, which is addendum B. I have too many things in my hand here. Yes, the lease addendum is A, so it's B, and there's actually multiple places it gets amended, but if it's amended in the first, that's fine. I had a few less pages in my hand, that would be helpful to me.
It's a two-page document.
It is. I'm just scrolling through the first part. Yes, so B, it's under the recitals, the cap is referenced.
3A on page 34, is that right? Well, you have it in the recitals as well.
Yes, it's in recitals, and then also, but it's substantive in 3A, you are correct. Substantive in 3A, and then also,
But if the amendment passes, you'll make sure it gets amended
We'll
throughout?
adjust the 3 paragraphs,
Okay.
yes, yep. So 3A is appropriate because that's a substantive paragraph.
You think 75 is enough?
To start.
Again, these are reasonable projections that Stan Tech is making. The hope is that 50
Is enough.
about as
Is
close
enough,
as the
right.
pace. So I'm just trying to provide a little bit of a buffer. And again, if it exceeds that for any reason, we'll bring it back and have the talk. But I think for us to give an unlimited cap again would be,
No, I'm not asking for a limited.
Yeah.
I just.
I think all I'm trying to do
We
is
can always
achieve a
approve
buffer.
more.
Right, and this is to close it, right? This is just to close it.
Well, and again, that's up to the DNR if it's deemed closed.
Right.
So, but that's the unknown with this whole process and why it's tough for, I think, both parties. But to me, it goes back to the whole conversation of like, why did we want to purchase this
Yeah.
property in the first place? And is 25,000 the thing that's going to stop us from doing it?
No, I agree. I mean, I'll support the motion.
Yeah. I
Okay,
don't,
so is that your official?
Is that number
Do you
one?
want
or-
do you want us to go through or do you want to do
well,
it all?
that, yeah, I'm going to do these as separate amendments.
Okay, so let's start with that amendment. Do I have a second then?
Yes, you have a second, Jeff.
Okay, do you need me to state exactly what that amendment is?
No, I have.
You're good with that? Okay, all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And you have another one?
Okay, so the next item, additional work industrial level closure would likely be covered by 100. Oh, that kind of all ties it together, I think. Okay, so the other one was related to whether we if we back out. Again, I think the attorney's doing exactly what they should do, and that is try to mitigate all possible risk from the deal for the city. But I also think that this has such a low likelihood, right, that there's a 0.00001% risk threshold here. And quite frankly, I think that goes both ways. But I also look at this and say, hey, if the property owner all of a sudden has to pay all environmental costs for something that we initiated and wanted to do, I do struggle with that a little bit. So I would make a motion to share those costs 50% up to the 75,000. And then again, with the same directive that if they were to exceed, that we would convene and discuss alternative options.
Okay, I think that's fair.
I'll second.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Yes, Alderaan.
Just to clarify, so you're saying that if we were to back out, then we still have to pay for up to 75,000 of the, basically the mediation, or remediation?
The environmental.
Yeah.
For the environmental that we initiated and requested.
Okay, but I also, there was a mention of the removal of equipment and.
And that's different.
That's not.
So,
part of this.
yeah, I just want to make sure it's
Yep.
covered. So, because it's just something that I don't think, I personally would not want the city to have to worry about.
Yeah, this is referring exclusively to the environmental
back
testing.
Environmental, yeah.
Yeah.
Just for clarification on the purposes about what we would pay, I know we already expended the grant funds and there's sort of a difference of agreement about how we got to the environmental remediation portion, but we have also previously agreed to terminate that promissory note that's due to the city for $571,000, which there's a difference of opinion about whether that was to get paid, whether we proceed with the sale, just a question of whether it renders Finger Road to be a $0 property in that sale or not. It's my understanding it was contemplated that there would still be value paid for that property, so just wanting to know, letting you all know we already agreed to that. In the event that we don't proceed with the sale, there's no additional funds paid by Hogan Real Estate for the Finger Road parcel. It returns the value down to $1.
Right, so we're really only looking though at the environmental piece if the sale does not proceed. Right, because I mean, if the sale does not proceed, I mean, I can't imagine another property would be found that quickly, though I never say never. I mean, there's potential, right, for tax implication there that would be sort of is that the right word? Borne by the seller?
Yeah, I just want to make a note because there was
Yeah.
some contention about that early on because the way the promissory note and the DA was drafted, that was that promissory note would be paid to the city by August 31st regardless of when the sale was completed, which we had some conversation about whether that was what was actually understood to be the case during the development agreement proceedings. But as I mentioned, we've already agreed that that would terminate.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we're both kind of assuming some risk here. And again, I think the risk threshold is just very tiny. But if it helps people feel like it's buttoned up, like I'm.
No, I agree, because I don't think it's going to change.
Okay.
We're not
Was there
backing
a
out.
second? I didn't know.
Did you second?
Yes.
that? You did? Okay. All right, then we're ready for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Then I would move to amend to add what was already understood, just couldn't be updated in the document, but I would move to amend to add the $2,000 closing cost contribution.
Okay, have a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then if I'm not mistaken, I think the last item remaining would be around the property surrender. Is that correct? Okay, so I have thoughts, but I don't know what you guys think. Alder Eck was alluding to it.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, not knowing what could be left behind and what cleanup would fall on us. I don't know how to really navigate that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, how are you ever gonna navigate that? And are you gonna, I mean, if we don't do anything with that for 20 years from now, you're gonna go back to them? And, you know, like, to me, when you're buying a property, you're typically, you're buying it and it has this condition, minus environmental stuff here, right? So I think of Badger Sheet Metal, right? We bought it, the building's on it, we assume that responsibility and that, because I think the challenge that we have is we know the importance of this parcel, but we don't have specific intent in mind for it right now. We certainly discuss some options, but that could be 5, 10, 20 years into the future. So that's I think, a little bit of the dilemma.
Just a point, I guess when I'm thinking about it is any equipment or, machinery.
Yeah.
When you vacate a property, usually you take all of your items with you, so that's what I was looking at.
And I think the language in there says that they will clear out the items that they want, and of course, the rest would be there.
Well, that,
Yeah.
yes, is a problem.
Well, is it? Because there's a lot of organizations you can hire out there that'll come in and, you know, take out iron and steel and anything that would be of value. Same thing that they did out at the AMS building.
What it would cost.
Although I think it's safe to say that, from my perspective, if Mr. Hoban knows that it's not worth much for scrap, it's gonna really just be the cost of removing it, just based on like, that's just to be frank about our reason for issue, and I know the deputy director could talk more about like what Badger sheet metal is costing us upwards of nearly $1 million, I think, to demo, is that right?
Yeah, north of
And that's
that,
a big-
1.1.
Thank you.
Does that include remediation though, too?
Remediation, yes, and a lot of that remediation is in building materials.
And the reason I bring that up, of course, is because I know when the time comes for us to look at redevelopment options on this site, there will likely be a site remediation, there could be material
Right.
remediation, right? But my hope, at least, and recognizing there's no guarantee that there would be other grant opportunities in the future around, whether it's brownfield, EPA, others. But again, we don't know if that's in 5 years or 20 years. And that's why, to me, it would be a little unorthodox to go into an agreement when, you know, that cleanup could be 20 years down the road, and then you're gonna go back to the seller and make them pay. Right, like that's, I don't even know how you do that. I'm sure there's a
Because we
legal
would own
way,
it.
but.
Just for clarification, what we contemplated here is just that the city's not responsible for it at the end of the lease termination. The tenant, which is what the seller becomes after we purchase this, the tenant's responsible for moving that property.
So
But
you're
again,
suggesting that whether it's early termination or at the end of the full lease, either way, it's when
Yeah, so it's
they
lease
vacate the
termination, whether
property?
that's early or not, with the exception of like the early redevelopment that we were willing to pay for some of those costs,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like. But yes, so at the end of lease term, which could be early, could be at the end of year 10. Hopefully it's not at 6 years after that extension that's talked about. But yes, that would be that the tenant removes those things. And we had already agreed that we're not concerned with damage to the property for removal and those types of things. We were just concerned with like the possible expense if some of the equipment that needs to be removed would require a crane, specialized equipment, and this is just coming from our experience of, I know the mayor's talked about this experience of how much it costs the contractor to remove the press out of Greenway Press, because that building that we purchased as an example, the seller agreed to fund that. That was done after the fact, but then also Badger Sheet Metal is a recent demolition, and just the cost of those and all of that money will have to be borne by the TID as well, if we do either redevelopment and it's not just used for future industrial use as is, which seems unlikely.
Yeah, and that's
I don't
where-
think we're gonna get another forging company in there to operate
Right.
it after the fact.
And that's where I get a little hung up, right, because we don't even know what our use is. And, I mean, I'm trying to imagine a scenario where somebody buys a property, I mean, and doesn't know the use. I mean, you're gonna contemplate those expenses. If you're a private party, you're buying a property, and you're looking at it and saying, you know what, I'm gonna use it for land, this is the value, and if this is what it's gonna cost to demo, to get my cost basis where it needs to be, you're gonna contemplate demolition expenses. I think we're coming at it a little bit differently, thinking about public use of that land, and what's the best from a city planning perspective. So I think we look at it from a different lens, but, you know, we're contemplating the removal of something when we're saying, oh, you know, do we want a clean site, or are we actually going to reuse that site? I mean, we're not going to start up a forging operation, right? So to me, it's always been understood and maybe implied, even if it wasn't explicit, that, you know, there's going to have to be some demolition costs involved here to get this site into the condition that we would expect it in order to redevelop it. Much as we've done with other sites where this has been the case. Right? I mean, we didn't go to Schauer and Schumacher and say, oh, you know, tear down the building so we have an empty site, right? Thank God that didn't have to happen, by the way. But
Just again, for clarification, we're not asking for them to tear down the building.
I thought it was just remove all your
the
belongings.
personal
The
property.
big equipment that's gonna cost us extra, that's not normal to cover.
Yeah.
The demolition we're expecting to cover.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's the
Well, where's
removal of
the-
the large equipment.
But that's what's articulated in here, so I don't know,
articulated where, I'm sorry, which paragraph are you looking at? We can talk about it specifically if you have a question. If there's a misinterpretation, but yeah, what we're
Well,
just
but I think
talking
that
about
goes
is-
to Bill's point, where there's maybe different people who are interpreting the language differently.
It's just an idea that, so the seller wants to be able to walk away from the property and leave whatever they don't want in the building. And the city's perspective is, we want it cleaned up. We want it emptied out
Remove
to
the
the extent
equipment.
possible. That's the difference of opinion there, and I totally respect that. That's what Mr. Hogan's asking for, is that we just take it as is. Because they are buying new equipment for the facility, I know, moving some, but throughout this process, he's explained that we don't need it all. And would like to not incur the costs of removing the forging equipment that they don't need and maybe isn't worth much to
But
scrap
how much
it.
of that is movable versus something that's sort of built into the building?
We've had some conversations about that, but we don't, again, this goes back to our original conversation, but we don't have like a list of equipment or things that we're talking about. Like I said, we did agree that, some damage removal, 'cause some of the equipment is going, right? So we did agree to that there's no issue with damage for removal or, and maybe,
Okay.
I realize I was pointing at Bill and the floor is not open, so.
I would make a motion to open the floor.
Open the floor. Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I despise formalities like this, Bill, when you just want to
I
talk,
was
but.
wondering, I heard you open the floor.
Yes, the floor is open, Bill.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's another thing that it was, if we would have done it over again, some of the things that we said we'll just sort out afterwards and discussions that were had and comments that we had made of this is how we're marketing this property, that we had looking to sell it, that we were going to be taking care of getting rid of everything on our exit. And so again, these things were all talked about, and this is where we're going to market it, what is your offer, and they came back, city came back with a lower number than what we could have gotten on the open market, but obviously there were other things that were positive about the whole, tying it in with the move, but we didn't continue to press on, and what about our equipment that we're not going to need, and now when we're doing all the detailed agreements on this, those are some of the things that were forgotten, or on the environmental side of things, I know we're past that already, but it was, they have the grant money for it, there was never but at this point, this is where we've spent enough, or we're going to run out. It was like, after we got the results, then, well, we just found out we don't have any more grant money, so it's kind of fell back.
Talk to us, Bill, though, about like the equipment in there, right? Like Attorney Crochard had mentioned that we don't really have a list. I mean, what are we talking about for equipment that would potentially be left behind?
Some of the older equipment, I mean, like I said, we will try to do our best to get rid of the things and sell it on the open market, but there is a cost to pulling that equipment out of the ground. As I mentioned, we have pulled out some hammers, and by the time you get the riggers and pull it out and then sell it for scrap money, you basically wash. It's not like you're out a ton of money. If you can find the right buyer, they're gonna come in and pull it out for you, take it, and put it in their facility, and there still is companies that are out there that use this equipment, but kind of where you were talking about, we don't know what the future is. That is part of our exit plan. We have to be putting dollars aside to take care of everything, and then the property might sit another 20 years or 10 years or whatever with nothing being done on it. But we pulled out things that, I apologize for not having anything specific, but things that maybe we took extra care to get it out, and then through the demolition process, it could just all be taken care of, all the equipment that would be brought in specifically to knock down all those buildings.
I mean, you talking
I know
like
you
one
mentioned
hammer,
cranes.
10 hammers? I mean,
We probably have 4 or 5 hammers left at the most.
well, that's what I'm trying to me, there's
We're
a certain.
pulling those out as they're going out of service, we're getting rid of those. But,
I mean, to me, there's a certain assumption of risk anytime you're buying a property, but I appreciate where staff is coming from. And what I'm trying to figure out is the uncertainty around this. Is there a potential for a high degree of financial impact, or are we, at the end of the day, talking about pennies here? you know what I mean? I'm trying to determine if this is a worthy thing to, for us to dig our heels in on.
I would just suggest if you want to offer some cost, it should just be a fixed amount. Like I said, I think the example that we have more recently from the Press Gazette building, the move out of the press, which I know the Hammers are not a printing press, was somewhere in the neighborhood of nearly $400,000 when it was done. Myron did that work for the seller, and then we spent another nearly $30,000 just removing like some barrels, ink tank, like some light fixtures. And again, I'm not suggesting they have all that, but we just don't know. There we had like a itemized accounting of what was left in the plan to remove it, and that money was escrowed at the time to pay for it, but that work all happened within 6 months of closing on it.
Mm-hmm. And that was just like a standalone piece of equipment, right? Versus, are the hammers like actually built into the building, the infrastructure?
Well, each hammer has a base, and that base is cemented into the ground, so you have to bust up the concrete, which ultimately would be done when you're demoing things, and then there's a top to the hammer and the bottom to the hammer, so you can take those out piece by piece and sell them to a scrap dealer, basically. So
I'm
it's
assuming
the cost of
it's
pulling it
similar.
out of the ground, and then, as I mentioned, in turn, you
Similar, but
it's just added work for us that we're anticipating.
They're kind of built in.
They're built into the ground. So then, when she was talking about any destruction or issues that might happen with the property. So if we were to pull that out, there would be a pit there that we're not going to fill it all back in and fill it with concrete to make it look like a perfect floor if you're going to not meet that building anyways.
I mean, this might be simplistic, but when you go to purchase a house, there are certain things that are built in that have to stay with the house. If you ask the seller to remove them, they might remove them, but generally not unless the buyer's gonna pay for it. So is this kind of the same thing where they're gonna vacate, these things are all built in, and when you demolish the building, it goes away?
I mean, to me, it's like any other commercial real estate, right? Where if you can move it, it moves. But if you can't, and in this case, it sounds like you almost have to partially demolish the building in order to remove it. But I don't want to overstate that either. So that's what I'm trying to understand, Bill. If you could.
The floors need to be busted out to get them out. So you don't have to take out the walls of the building to get them out. They can go through the garage doors. Like I said, we pulled out 2 or 3 of them in the last year, and it wasn't a huge expense for us in the end of the scrapping of it. It's not something we want to deal with.
So you scrapped. So you've already taken out a couple. So after you got the scrap fee for it, what would you say your cost was? What was the net?
Pretty much neutral.
So neutral. So again, this goes back to my point of I appreciate the desire to mitigate the risk, right? But if we're looking at the possibility of neutral on 4 hammers.
If you were buying our property in Illinois, it would be a totally different situation because those upsetters, it's $200,000, $400,000 just to get them out of the ground and move them somewhere. It's a total mess. But these are not the same situation. Maybe it's a 40,000 pound chunk of material. Putting that on a truck.
Yeah, so we just had 2 things which are supportive of Mr. Oben's point. The first one, though, is just that the ask was that we insert language related, if you're reading this, related to personal property left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to say like that the hammers can be left behind, I would specify that. But I would also suggest, just from the city's contracting purposes, not to get ahead, but just sort of assuming that you all want to be supportive of providing them some funds for this. I think if we contract and have to bid it out, hire a consultant, whatever, I think providing some funds to the seller to actually remove it themselves, similar to what we did here, would probably save the city a lot of expense. Again, like the sellers of the Press Gazette hired Myron to do that, and if we had to do it, we would have had to like bid that process out, and I'm assuming it would have cost more and taken longer, where they were able to have a contract in there, directed all the work. It was just under a simple access agreement. So
could it be worded in such a way, Lacey, where it's that we identify maybe a cap for the seller, but then word it in such a way that it still leaves open the possibility for us to negotiate if it made more sense to include it with overall demo? You know what I mean?
It certainly, I mean, obviously, when we think about years down the road, there could be a possibility for grant funds, if there is grant funds at the time for redevelopment of sites like this. And there's obviously always an option. I think I could speak for CED in that if there were grant funds or other resources available, we would certainly go after those and use them for these costs. But I couldn't specify what those are now.
I'm just trying to find a way to get there, right, with protecting us, but being able to take advantage of maybe of some of those things that might exist.
I was just going to briefly mention, we would absolutely go after grants if they're available for work like that. Currently, how a lot of the remediation grants are today, and I think this would be a remediation grant, you're not eligible for those funds if there's a viable causer. So with Badger Sheet Metal, former Badger Sheet Metal site, a lot of the contamination there was from years and years ago, and so there was no viable causer, so we were eligible for those funds. In the case of Hammers, which might have hazardous waste associated with it, probably wouldn't be eligible for any grants.
Wouldn't that be disclosed, though? Wouldn't that come out in phase 2? If there was contamination directly tied to the use of
We
hammers?
didn't assess for hazardous building materials, I don't think, for this.
We also did very limited work, sub-slab work, with the exception of some vapor intrusion, just because the business is still operating.
Okay.
It wouldn't be just like a standard landfill cost, I wouldn't think, because of the industrial nature of it. There'd be additional costs.
But Bill, you said that the ones you removed recently were able to be recycled?
Yeah, in fact, we had shoe construction with their riggers pulling them out. And as quickly as they got them out, there was the scrap truck there that was taking them off and recycling them.
So may I ask why you chose to remove those but not the rest of them?
We were putting in that new 160 hammer. One of the pieces of equipment we brought in, we needed to make space to get those in, so we pulled those out. Used one of the holes that the existing hammer was in and took it out. The hammers had been out of service. They were, as I mentioned, some of these we might be able to sell, but that particular hammer had cracks and broken. It wasn't really sellable. It was just scrap value.
So the other 4, was it, are still usable?
3 out. We probably have 4 or 5 left.
Okay.
The other thing that we talked about really quick, just in the interest of trying to resolve this issue, which we've been trying to do now for the 6 or 7 days we've been working on these changes, they're going to be paying us rent money. I know at one point the mayor did suggest that we could put the rent money that's going to be paid into sort of an account and maybe draw from that if there's some desire to pay for some move out, but they are paying rent throughout this process, so if there's some direction to save or hold that money for these funds or for the site, you could either put a cap on it or just say we would look to that fund. I don't have for sure the dollar amounts, but you can see what the rent payments are in the document. But that's a source of funding that would be available, but that's the limit of what the city is getting back since process. I would also say that you could incentivize the early move out. I mean, this contemplates at the end of the 10-year period, but certainly we'd be willing to help move these things out or take it if it meant they would get out, move out. I'm sorry, I didn't say get out. Move out earlier. Move out earlier. Yeah.
I'm just looking.
Sounds like we're trying to chase you out, but I know you're wanting to get out as soon as possible here. So.
Could you? I know it's in here, but do you recall exactly where, Lacey?
For which provision, I'm sorry?
Exhibit A, lease addendum.
I'm looking for the term and then the lease payments.
Lease payments, I think, is on page 20 on mine.
Which page, 20?
20.
Oh, there it is, okay.
That's good. So obviously you can see the lease payment. So it really depends on when the lease term ends, basically, or when they terminate. If it's early, otherwise at 10 years, and you can see if that's 2 years, how much money we have, 3 years, 4 years, how much money we would have been paid in rent, which is a source of funding available.
Bill, when we first talked about this, I know the original time frame around the exit from this space didn't work for you.
Yeah, there was-
What was that time? Was it like 7 years?
No, it was 4 or less to install that the city was willing to. So,
But what you wanted, though, I think was at least 7, wasn't it? Something like that?
I think we,
But with renewable, what did we put in here for the term with renewable options? Or did that change?
At year 8, you need to tell us
8.
that
Yeah.
you want us out, and then that means we would meet at 10 years. If at year 8 you didn't have a use for it, and didn't inform us you wanted us out, we could stay for 16 years if we chose to. So, when I sat down, when the 4 years wasn't working out, I think that was the number. I just said, we're doing everything we can to move to the new facility. It costs us more to be at multiple facilities, but we can't predict that in that time frame we're going to be able to financially afford to move and put that next phase into place. So, needed some more time and agreed on the 10 years with the option of pushing it out if the city had no use for it.
Yep. Okay.
One of the things I talked about is we don't totally know the next phase. Does that mean that the next build, we could be building space for more forging equipment? And that takes precedent over trying to move the remaining machining and assembly work out. Maybe we would decide that that is not our core business and sell off that machining and assembly side of things and focus just on forgings. But right now, we're trying to get all the new equipment that is sitting over in Germany and the one piece that's here up and running and determining what the next phase will be. So, both financial reasons for holding off on the full build as well as not quite certain that that's the best move to do right now to build a facility. As we're getting into some new opportunities with this equipment that runs that much quicker, we're seeing much higher volume machining opportunities also, which is, we're not set up for that type of machining, so that would be a whole different business plan, and whether it makes sense to try to compete with some of the more established high-volume machine shops, or just to partner with them and have them do the machining work. And then that could also allow us to exit earlier out of the State Street property. Move out of the machining side of things, and not have to build a building for it.
Okay.
This idea you brought up is something that you haven't thrown to us or suggested. It's a different way of looking at it.
Okay.
Do we need to close?
Yeah, but make a motion to close the floor.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion, or the floor is closed.
So Lacey, I'd like to just kind of maybe expand on that thought there. Recognizing that, when we buy properties, we don't always have a tenant that's actually paying us to rent it, but also recognizing we're a little hamstrung in terms of taking control of the whole property right away, right? We can take part of it, but so it is kind of a nice incentive to be able to keep some of this out if there are future expenses, that it's not the TID that's bearing that expense. And if we're at if the initial lease term was 8 years, is that what it is?
It's 10, actually. We just, there's an interesting provision that was negotiated development agreement that we have to provide a notice to terminate in that 8th year. There's a specific time frame. And
Okay.
if we don't, or as Mr. Hoban said, for some reason, we want to allow them to keep renting it, it goes from 10 to a max of 16 in the release. Obviously, we could amend that
Yep.
at any time, but that's what's contemplated
Okay.
now.
So, because I do like the suggestion of maybe having an incentive to vacate the property. So the first 10 years of lease payments, $226,127 is what that total would be if my math is right here. So what I'm kind of wondering, you know, if like the first, if there are costs associated with removing equipment, we will remove up to that balance. And then anything beyond that would become the seller's responsibility at the time of vacating. Understanding that we would first pursue, clean up our grant opportunities, but if those do not exist, then we would look at those lease payments that would be held in a restricted account, or however you do it from an accounting perspective. Is that kind of what you were suggesting, Lacey?
Yes, and I think you've added to it, which is a good idea, that perhaps the money could be available earlier than the end of the lease term, so well during their lease term, if you have a portion that, or if they have a portion, well, we already talked about early redevelopment, but even outside of redevelopment, if there's a portion that, of these hammers, what we're talking about, that can be removed, and we do have rent money that's been paid, I think maybe that's what you alluded to, that all the rent money could be paid, or could be used.
Yeah, and then,
But incentivizing it that it could be used earlier, just for the sake of, is that what you
Well,
mean?
even though the incentive to me is if we want to create an incentive for them to either vacate at year 10 or even sooner, that if they extend beyond year 10, that opportunity goes away.
Well, certainly, but there shouldn't be a situation where they extend past the 10 years, because I think unless for some reason we decide we don't need the property or want to use it for anything else, we will absolutely be sending a notice of termination, at least that's the direction I have. So we'll be terminating at year 10, which I'm assuming that we move out before then, but, so you maybe want to like set that back to 5 or 6, or maybe that year 7 that we talked about. The difference, or what I was talking about, maybe I added too much to what you were saying, was just that we could use some of the rent money after it's accumulated to do some of that work, put that towards the early redevelopment cost that we were talking about. And maybe part of that could be moving equipment that allows for some additional work to take place. Again, it's hard to speculate because I don't really truly, it's not really my place to understand the whole lay of the land. I haven't been on a tour or anything like that to say what could be done or not. But I think the rent money is a fair place to pull from.
Could we do this, recognizing again, we could sit here for hours, right? You've been working on it for days. If we were to make a motion to direct, we've already made the other amendments, but on this one, to direct you to continue to negotiate, recognizing, that, at least I'm suggesting this, not speaking for the other members of the committee, but recognizing that I do like the idea of depositing those funds into a pool that could be used to help mitigate the costs associated with the removal of that equipment, and then you guys could maybe kind of hash out the details, hopefully come to something that's mutually agreeable before the council meeting. Is that
Yeah, I'm certainly okay with that.
okay? That'd be possible?
Does that sound okay?
I lost talk. Yeah. I think we can go towards that.
Yeah, and recognizing that if we're still at an impasse come council meeting, well then council has
Sure.
the ability to make amendments at that time too, right? So,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the direction specific related to how we could utilize the rent payments for that. No additional funds.
and
just
costs
rent payments.
associated with equipment removal.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just don't want us to sit here for hours yet
Well,
trying
that's
to
fine.
figure this out.
And again, I'm just sort of throwing that out there because you're all deciders on that one, but it's to solve these issues, but it's.
But I think that's the problem, right? We're not sitting at a choice right now. All of us, we're kind of negotiating in a way, and I think it would be better to let you continue to do what you do well and hopefully come up with an option that you can put in front of us and where both parties can agree to it.
Yes, both parties.
Okay, so I would move that we refer to staff to try to negotiate out that final item related to pooling of lease payments for, I don't know what's the right word for.
Yeah, just using rent, accumulated rent to offset costs for move out?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That's what I was saying, right, guys? Yeah.
That's exactly what you were saying, right?
It's like you said it better.
So is that a motion?
Do I have a second?
That's a motion, yeah.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then do we need to reapprove as a whole, or as amended then? So we just put forward 3 amendments, but one of them's kind of a hold.
Yes, I think because you referred it back, I think we could just leave it as a referred back to staff, if that's okay, if you want
Okay.
to do that, and then the final will come back.
Mhm.
on
With,
Tuesday.
Refer back to staff with amendments?
But the 3 amendments that were approved
Right,
would
you
be
voted on
captured,
staff, yeah.
right?
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
So do we need
It's probably not
to
the
vote
most
again?
elegant Robert's rules,
I
but
wasn't, I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention to what you voted on, so I apologize there, just then.
We voted on referring the last part back to you. Now,
Yes.
as a whole, do we need to refer or vote as amended and refer back to staff?
and I think either way it comes back
We
to us.
good.
It's
Yeah,
not
it's
a
fine.
final,
Okay, so
yeah.
we can move on to item 3?
So just for clarification, this is not going to be moving on to the council packet.
No, it
will
does
be.
need to move on.
It does need to move on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I should,
Again, it's refer back to staff.
Yeah.
but it's a motion,
That's what I, yeah.
And then that's-
okay, if we gotta be proper about it, motion to reconsider.
Okay,
I'm making that motion right now.
okay.
Kathy,
And I'm
just-
seconding it,
Yes.
okay.
Okay,
That's what I'm looking
One like.
let's have some more discussion.
Then
Just
all the
kidding.
Well, we had a vote on the
No, I'm just
reconsider,
joking.
so,
Oh, okay. All those in favor for the reconsideration, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
okay.
Okay.
Now I'll make a motion that this be placed on the next council agenda with the accepted amendments and referred to staff to continue
drafted.
negotiation around those words you said, and then present the final language in the council packet for consideration and adoption.
It's a unique one, yeah. I think that's fine.
Because then it's not just a referral to staff, then it's actually
Right.
showing.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Good job.
Welcome to government.
Okay, number 3, consideration of possible action, a request from Alder Eck to a total of expenses by department that can be attributed to the St. John's Park this year, June 2024 to June 2025. Alder Eck, would you like to elaborate a little?
You want me to sit up there?
Why not?
I mean.
Or you can stay there, you're in the front row.
Name and
You can
address,
hear it,
please.
yeah. Okay, so, yes, I put this forward, and I do want to just clarify, I know Alder
Thanks,
Hinkes asked me, thank you. Alder Hinkes had asked me prior to the meeting if it was sparked by the meeting last week, but I do want to say that I put in the communication prior to even knowing there was going to be the listening session. But a part of, I guess, of bringing it forward is, we're looking at putting together a master plan, and it would be, I just felt it would be helpful to get kind of a overview of the current use and the costs around that, and it looks like we may have that in front of us, so.
The one question that I did ask Melinda was, do we have anything to compare this to? Another park?
And I know that's, you asked me about that, and I
Yeah.
was thinking about it during the other parts of the meeting, and this is kind of a unique situation in that we are doing this whole master plan for it, which we aren't doing for other parks, so, but I understand why you're saying, asking about that kind of pinpointing one park over another, but that's the unique part about this one.
Because
Well, except that we are master planning for other parks. I mean, Joanne's, what was the other one? It was
Well, we just did Farland recently.
Farland.
Well, Joanne's is the aquatic
Right, but
center.
then the
That's
skate
a
park
whole-
was also going, I mean,
So I could talk a little bit about that in regards to the park standpoint. So comparing this to other parks, really, a lot of the cost is, mowing, snow removal, park cleanup, stuff like that. We do that in all of the parks. We do a little more cleanup at this one than others, because we actually go there twice a week. And we actually do a complete thorough cleanup of that park twice a week. But as far as kind of the special project expenses, that's a case-by-case basis. We have no way to really compare that to a specific park because we do different projects at different parks. So I would say bathroom cleaning, mowing, and snow removal are very comparable to other ones. Park cleanup is probably a little more heavy at St. John's than other parks because we go there more regularly and spend more time there. The one that I think really kind of stands out would be the police-related calls and response. I can't really speak to that. I know the police department isn't at this meeting. That's a pretty high number. But it is to be expected with all of the issues that we've talked about at that park. So I would say that that's probably, much higher than at other parks, but we do have police calls in every single park, so keep that in mind. So really hard to compare it to another specific park unless you give me a specific park to compare it to.
Well, do we have any other parks that have over 100 police calls at them?
I don't know that because I've never
Okay.
asked that question.
Fair.
One thing I do want to note is this cost that I show here is just, for the most part, staffing costs, and it does not include benefits. This is just wages. So when you include benefits, it's higher than that. It's really tough to give you a very accurate dollar amount of what the benefits would equate to because it's really depends on what staff member is there. Some staff member don't take insurance at all, others take single rate, others take family rates. So unless you actually have a specific person to compare it to, or just assume it's a family insurance rate for everybody, it's hard to give you what that total benefits cost is.
I presume that these are sunk costs, meaning it's not like we're not going to pay this money if there's not a call because the officer's still on duty. So the only new cost would be if they obviously are being called in to respond to something, and then of course the opportunity cost of not addressing other needs in the community.
Yeah, and I can't speak to how many of these police calls were overtime expenses. I would speculate that almost everything in here is nearly just on duty. Or, I know in the park standpoint end of things, nothing is overtime. So this is, our park staff is getting paid whether or not they're at St. John's or a different park doing work.
Alderic, I'm curious, is the request for this, was it just trying to tie it into the park master plan, or is it perhaps maybe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? Is it maybe just trying to do an analysis around the cost to respond to incidents related to unhoused?
Yeah, I would say, and the biggest part would be the police-related calls and responses. I know it's your district, but I do get a lot of complaints about that particular aspect of it. So
Yeah, no, and
it helps kind of clarify that it's, legitimate as far as the complaints, that there's a lot of police calls there.
Absolutely, and I take a lot of them too, right? And of course, I think one of the challenges we've had with this park is if you go in and disrupt it, for example, it's not like this would be an expense that goes away, because now they just might be responding to a call in a different location. St. James, Jackson, private property, right? I don't know. So, and that's why I want to be sensitive to the fact that 100% agree, we've got to really address what's going on in that park, and I think there are a lot of really good folks who are doing it while still acknowledging that there's a citywide, countywide, homeless issue that we're also trying to combat and tackle. And that's why I want to be fair that we're not just like hyper-focusing on this one location if the issue is really more like all calls related to the issue of, I don't know, disruption related to the unhoused. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a subject that's, could be very volatile. Obviously, after going to the hearing about the results of the meeting last week, that there's a lot of there's various opinions on it, and so I want to be sensitive to it too, because I wish there was like a answer, an easy answer. There's not. But I think it's helpful to have this information in front of us. We're making decisions for the city.
Totally agree, and I think the number of police calls is helpful, and this is almost to a certain extent I wish Alder Galvin was here, because he's always good
Yes.
at understanding, what's a serious police call versus something that happens everywhere, right? Like a car got pulled over for speeding and, but
And I haven't broke down the type of calls as far as the seriousness of it.
Mhm.
You'd have to ask the police for that.
And actually, Alder Stevens had put that
Yeah.
in, so I don't know if you guys got that email.
we did, yeah.
Was- Yeah, there was a breakdown of the types, so we do have that, yeah. So, honestly, it is an actionable item, but this seems to be provided, so I don't
Why
know,
would you want
it's
it
more
that
of a
quickly?
brief Stephen
Yeah.
placement file, really.
Yeah, I
Because
think
we
maybe
have
just
it.
kind of take it as useful information to help inform decisions either at the park or around enforcement.
Yes.
Okay.
I wonder too if in the future there is benefit of comparing parks, like you said, and when
And
we think
looking at
about.
police calls there, and what do we do
Right.
overall with
Right.
all of the parks and the number of police calls? Has anybody talked to St. John's about them providing any help in the park as far as police or?
Yes.
Yep.
There's a lot of conversations that go on around this topic. I think the challenge is, St. John's is in charge of the shelter. They're not in
Yes.
charge of a public park.
Yeah.
But I think
Right.
everybody, including St. John's, would acknowledge that their location and proximity obviously helps, is a contributing factor to attracting
Right.
individuals to the park. So,
And, and the church is involved as well. That they are the ones who started St. John's Ministries. Kind of a fun fact, I got married at St. John the Evangelist just over 38 years ago. And while going through the premarital counseling, there was a knock on the door, and it was somebody coming there for a meal. It's because they knew that's where they could go. And it was, somebody homeless, actually a couple people. So they've started that ministry a long time ago. So people are already kind of used to that area because of that, So it's sort of been that way for a long time.
Yeah, and I used to, when I was at the YW, our kids used to go down there and play in that park. And nobody's been playing in that park now for 6, 7 years.
Yeah, we've heard that complaint a lot.
yeah.
And that's
Well,
difficult.
the public input session that the Parks Department hosted, you guys did a great job, by the way.
Yes.
I think I had a lot of really great suggestions, and but also recognizing that a master plan itself can take a while, and then you put it into a capital improvement plan, right? I mean, you could be 5+ years out before you actually
Can do
see
anything.
changes there. So
Yeah.
this is where I think something like this can be useful to help understand the scope of city services that are being redirected to address this
Yeah.
and help us, I guess, figure out what to do. I think nobody's got the answer, right? If
No.
the answer existed, it probably would be
Right.
solved.
It's a city.
All right, well then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 4, consideration of possible action on approval of the claims committee reports.
Thank you.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Informational 2025 contingency account, 25,000. Next meeting is August 12th, 2025. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned.
I guess technically you made the motion.
Yeah.
You said so moved, so. I like the efficiency you were
Well, this,
putting in there.
this whole contract thing was driving me crazy.
Hold on.
Oh, are we done?